We are out here talking about inmate
Mhm.
officer relationships. I'm Marcy Marie.
And I'm the Toonch. I'm Toonchy.
Tunchi, between the two of us, we have 35 years lived experience in the Texas prison system. And
God.
we, yeah, that sounds so massive, right?
It is. So if anybody says, "Oh, y'all don't know," or "You don't know what you're talking about," I promise you, we do. We really do.
We've seen it more than once. Whatever the topic is about Texas women's prisons, we have either experienced it firsthand or witnessed it firsthand numerous times.
Numerous times. So this particular topic, yes, absolutely. We've seen it numerous times. Now, I've never participated in a relationship with a correctional staff member, jail or prison, or the youth facility. But I've seen it a lot. I've seen it a lot. Marcy, now you didn't have any staff relationships.
Someone asked me this on my social media, and I went to post a video and responding to the question, just that very question: have you ever been in a relationship with an officer while you were in prison? And I went to respond, and my oldest daughter, y'all, she texted me and she said, "Mom, that last video you uploaded, I held my breath until you said nope." Nope. No, I haven't. I have had, okay, so inappropriate, probably a little inappropriate, as in, um, talk about more than probably an officer and inmate should talk about,
Mhm.
because you do get personalities that mesh just like you do anywhere else that happens. And when you've been there so long, you see officers coming in as brand new COs and you see them going up the ranks. And I
Mhm.
mean, and you've experienced that part of their career. You might share a little bit more. Like I might know about some officers' kids' school play or something, and that's
Right.
inappropriate, right? But romantic, no, absolutely not. Never,
Never. Mm-mm.
never.
Me either. Yeah, you're right, and that's a good distinction, right? Because by the rules, by policy, staff and people who are incarcerated are to keep a very plain, professional, non-emotional, you know, I dare I say human relationship, right? It is just supposed to be very bland and to the point. And I think, in terms of inappropriate, I've had a few staff, it wasn't correctional officers. I got along with a few better than others. I respected a few better than others, but some staff that maybe worked in my work area, I was very close to. Probably highly inappropriate in terms of just we're not supposed to be friends. And I don't even want to use the word friends, but I was very close to them emotionally, and I felt maybe I just felt a little bit better about that because they were not COs. Um, but you really treated me more humane than just correctional staff did. So of course you develop that bond, and you're right. You see somebody, you're locked up for 10 years. You're with this person. The lady I worked with in the library worked with her for 8 years every day. Well, 5 days a week, when she was there. That's a long time to work with somebody and not be close to them. But what we're talking about, like you said, is romantic, sexual, inappropriate relationships between staff and people who are incarcerated.
That boom chicka wow wow kind of
That stuff,
relationship.
that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And Marcy, and you saw that a lot there at Lane Murray. I'm sure probably even more than Mountain View, but what are your thoughts? Because there's a different variety of opinions online, but as someone who did 10 years, what is your opinion of those types of relationships?
So while I was incarcerated, my opinion was a little bit less strong than it is now. While I was incarcerated, I knew, not only just from the experience of seeing how bad that could turn out for the women involved, but just for my personal self, knowing that I wouldn't ever want my partner to have that much power over me. Um, so I knew it wasn't for me, but while I was incarcerated, I kind of had the don't judge, it's whatever kind of attitude. So much so that, I've helped, like we help each other in there do everything else. I've done that too, held eyes, passed notes. I've participated in that way. Since I came home, looking back at the vulnerability of the ladies I was incarcerated with, I am strongly against it. There is definitely the imbalance of power there. It's immoral, it's unethical, it's unprofessional, and it's illegal.
Right. Yeah, and that's what a lot of people, they can have judgments all they want about, well, they fell in love and, all this other stuff that you hear. And it is against the law. It is Prison Rape Elimination Act is a federal law that these relationships are illegal and you can be prosecuted for them. And there are staff that, if they can prove that they're having a sexual relationship, they are prosecuted for that. Now, the person in custody is not. Now, they may suffer other repercussions like getting major disciplinary or whatever, but they don't get a charge for it. The correctional officer does, because like you said, this is about power. This is not about a romantic story of beating the odds. And and it goes on both sides. For the correction officer, because everybody might remember recently when the staff person at a jail helped a guy escape, and then she died. I believe she unalived herself during the chase. And it's to keep staff from being manipulated, but it's also to keep us safe in terms of, like you said, that imbalance of power. Because girl, I would get mad, and I would try not to judge. And I'm a laid back person, and I don't care about stuff, you know what I mean? But it would make me mad because I would see somebody everybody knows is having an inappropriate relationship with an officer, and then make it worse when it's a rank. Okay, well, now I can't piss her off, because if
Yeah.
I piss her off, she's got an officer in her pocket. That is the imbalance of power, not just with, the person that's into the relationship, because now you're at the whim of this authority figure dictating the relationship, but everybody else that's around is like, well, now you have the power over other people that you're incarcerated with. Because those relationships, that's what they all symbolize to me, was a power dynamic.
So, and just along those same lines, I'm in cell block housing, but I'm not in medium custody. I'm in the general population dorm, and it's one evening. There is a young officer. She is a sergeant's daughter, and she is in a full-blown inappropriate relationship, romantic relationship, with one of the ladies in my dorm. Now, she came on shift, and I don't know the turn of events that made her really sour at that young lady. I don't know that part, but what I do know is me and my friend are sitting on the bench, and she came right over to us, and she pumped my friend up to jump on the girl. She fired her up, and she kept telling her, don't worry, do it over here off the camera. I'm not gonna write you a case. You're not gonna get in trouble. They're gonna take her." And this was this was the officer's way. So y'all, if you get in a fight, it doesn't matter if somebody jumps on you. If you put your hand up to stop them, you are getting a case. So not only did this lady want the girl to possibly get hurt in some kind of physical altercation, but she wanted her to lose her privileges. And that's a major case, guys. That prevents parole. That can keep you from having contact visits. I mean, that takes you to a whole nother level. These officers have all the authority in the world. And let me tell you, The girl did. My friend jumped on her. They fought. And that young lady, she didn't let it go. She didn't turn a blind eye. She sprayed them to stop. So then once that officer used that chemical agent, of course she has to, now it's an ICS. Now they're both in handcuffs. Now she's obligated to write 2 major disciplinary infractions for an instance that she instigated. She instigated that. That all stemmed from hurt feelings behind a relationship that should have never been happening in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, right, because, I mean, who's gonna believe, when they both get locked up, who's gonna believe when they, "Hey, she convinced me to do this," and did they don't. I don't believe that. You know what I mean? It plays out in so many different ways that we always lose. We always lose, and a friend of mine that happened to be in that situation later on, years later, she was able to see it, and I was surprised. I didn't think that I always felt like, well, she'll always just see it as a relationship, and that she was in love with him and he was there for her. No, years later she was like, nobody lost in that situation but me. He got to go home. He got to quit and be the big guy and say, well, I'm in love and I quit this job when they started investigating. And she goes, but who got shipped to Hobby and got a major case and got treated like garbage by the other staff and the other officers? I did. Who lost everything? I did. She said, we always lose. And the fact that he, approached me when I was vulnerable after a family member had died and preyed upon that. She goes, I see it for what it is now. Because that is exactly what it is.
So Karen Nelson, sorry, Karen, says sad abuse of power. And that's exactly what that situation is. He took complete advantage of that situation. And that happens to both genders in the free world, and it happens in prison. The difference between an officer and inmate is, again, that imbalance of power, right? The officer has complete control over the inmate's entire life, quite literally, entire life, quite literally, their contact with their children or not. I mean, that kind of power, serious power.
And I had another friend that Marcy, she was involved with another staff member. And I said, look, I don't, I'm telling you right now, I don't get down like that. I don't like that. I don't, it just, and she tells me later, I said, well, I did ask this because you do want to know, well, what are they doing for you? If they know that you're locked up and they know the kind of food you eat in the chow hall, are they bringing, what are you getting out of this? Are you just getting used? Somebody's just having sex with you and just taking full advantage. But like, I'm not saying it's right to get anything in return, but like, well, are they putting money on your books? Are they providing something to your family? Like, are they doing something other than just using you? Oh, well, yeah, she gives me things. And I said, like what? She gave me s- some orange slices. I said, from commissary? She gave you a package of orange slices from commissary, and she knows that you eat that garbage in the chow hall. She didn't bring you her lunch. She didn't feel bad, but she loves you, right? She loves you. She gave you a package of orange slices from commissary. And she goes, later on, she tells me, she says, well, I had my sister look her up on Facebook. And she said, honey, she's got a girlfriend and a little girl, and they were out celebrating at a picnic. I don't know what you're talking about. She said that they were getting divorced. And I said, but she loves you. You know what I mean? And I have never seen one of those relationships be balanced.
Okay, but I have seen one successful one.
One?
And one out of all of them. But it wasn't so much that they did not have a relationship of a romantic level while the young lady was incarcerated, but they did meet each other that way. And when she got out, they ended up he quit his job because he was going to date her. And it was a little bit different, right? It was still the officer inmate, and that is
Mhm.
how they met, but there was no kind of boom chicka wow wow during while she was incarcerated. And so I learned that when I first got out, and I've only been home 2 years, so I don't know what you judge like as a huge success. So they're probably at about 4 years at this point now, but they're together. The last time they're on my social media, and you know, couples pics and all that. But
Mhm.
he had to quit his job, obviously.
Well, I feel better about that than, hey, we might have been closer than what policy says, but it wasn't illegal and it wasn't anything that was an imbalance of power. And I controlled myself and maintained good boundaries. And then when you got out, um, established a relationship. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I know a lot of us are friends or on friendly terms or have somewhat more personal, close relationships to people that used to work there. Maybe even some that still do, but it's not the imbalance of power. So, I feel like that's a success story in the right way to say, hey, if you mean it, and I hate to say this, sound like my dad. If he loves you, he'll wait.
Right.
If it means that much, then I will do the right thing and give it a try when you get home. But the kind of crap that we've seen for years, the one the woman that we were incarcerated with always loses out.
Oh,
Always.
for sure. For sure. So my first experience with seeing that firsthand, is at Plain State Jail. There was an officer, and sadly, that officer has since taken his life. But there was an officer there, and he was known. He brought in cheeseburgers of all things, and he was getting, I can say BJ, he was getting that for a cheeseburger. I mean,
Mhm.
that's what kind of situation that was. And I think a lot of people's first instinct is like, why would somebody do that? Why would somebody do that? But guys, if you've never been incarcerated, there is something, especially as a female that's used to getting attention from men. So when you get incarcerated, they do everything they can to take your femininity away from you. Okay.
Mhm.
So, I mean, they're dressing you in men's clothes. They're giving you a little bar of soap to wash your hair. I mean, literally everything they can do to take that away. And so you're without that. And when you get just a little bit of attention, you're not in a mental place to know whether that attention is real, whether it's easy to mistake that for real affection.
Right.
And it was heartbreaking to watch. It was heartbreaking to see that happening.
Well, yeah, you've been stripped of everything, and a lot of the women that we know come in with a lot of broken self-esteem. I did. You could have played on me in a different way, actually for a long time. The other women I was incarcerated with played on that self-esteem. So I can only imagine if I had let my guard down with guards.
Mhm.
I just never did because I I have my own issues with authority anyway. And so, but I can see, why um the other ladies around me were just, so aching for attention and affection in a place that had stripped it from us and coming in not having much to begin with. Um, yeah, and people can laugh at say, well, he's getting that for cheeseburgers, and I've seen women do far more for far less, and it's not funny. It's sad. It's sad because it also speaks to how desperate we are on the inside to have things that feel normal. I had a friend that was having an affair with the kitchen manager, and d- very sexual relationship, and he was bringing her CDs in the office to listen to.
That
And,
happens.
Yeah.
Those kitchen bosses, there is something to that because in a decade on one unit, s- kitchen bosses come and go, come and go, come and go. And when I tell you, not one, not two, but three for certain were all that in the back of the kitchen.
Marcy, let me tell you this. This is a little known case. I wish I had pulled it up and thought of it. But the kitchen boss at Riverside years ago, I had already left. I think it was the first time I'm April. Um, but there was a kitchen boss that was working Riverside who ended up being caught and charged for being a serial rapist in Gatesville. He was raping older people, old ladies. He was, like hitting little single old ladies living by themselves. And when they finally caught him, he was the kitchen manager at Riverside. So there is some weird thing about maintenance bosses and kitchen managers. It's very
Yeah,
strange.
that's insane. Maintenance bosses is another thing, but and I'll tell you, maintenance bosses, they do have definite authority. They don't wear a badge, but their word is golden compared to an inmate, guaranteed. And guys, when I say compared to an inmate, I mean compared to every inmate on the unit. There's been a situation where an officer lied on my girlfriend, told a complete lie, put it on paper on a disciplinary case, and said that an incident happened in front of a chow hall full of people. And when I tell you we had 40 people write in witness statements, that's not what happened. And that captain looked at her at disciplinary court and said, I have to go with whatever my officer says. I mean, that's literally how it happens. So definitely maintenance bosses have that authority, but it's a little bit less creepy to me. And I don't know if it's just my hang up with maybe legal authority, because of what I've been through, or yeah, I don't really know why, but that happens definitely. Maintenance bosses get walked off often. Um,
Often, a lot.
yes,
Right, maintenance men. Well, and I think it's because they have more opportunity. So they have more opportunity to find little spots because they're going to fix something. So they know all the little crooks and little nudges to go hide out into, and if you've got three girls on your squad and all three of them are down, then like you said, they participate. And what does he do? He brings them stuff to make sure they don't tell. And if they do, a lot of times, nothing really happens other than maybe they get job changes or what have you. But um,
an investigation happens. The girls probably go to SEG for a little while, and then it comes out maybe he's put on probation just because of the allegations. It has to be something pretty serious, like somebody ends up pregnant for you to lose your job. And honestly, it's illegal. But and keep in mind I was in prison, so I don't know the outside of things, but information has a way of traveling around. I don't know of any cases where any of the women that I knew, the officers ended up getting caught where they had any legal action taken against them. Furthermore, there was an officer that got caught in the utility closet. I don't know that it was full on that, but it was definitely touching and that. And with an inmate, he got walked off that day. And weeks later, the girl got a UT, went on to
mhm.
another unit, and he came back. And where had he been? He wasn't at home with no pay. He was on another unit where she wasn't at. And then they brought him right back, to choose another girlfriend, which is exactly what he did.
Right, yeah, because once they see that there's a climate of, the culture at that unit is you can do this and get away with it, then that's exactly what starts happening. I did see a difference like back in the day before there was Priya. It was real bad, out of control. But at least when Priya happened, there was a little bit more of an effort to stop that kind of thing. And again, going to the difference in units, not that it doesn't happen at Mountain View, but when it happens, it didn't happen for long. I mean, because women can't hold water, they can't keep secrets, and it's only a matter of time. Somebody's going to drop forms or report the right way. And there's an immediate investigation. And the people that were, you know, being investigated were, you know, shipped off. And that was that. Recently, over the past year, the girls wrote and said, "Oh my God, Officer so and so, he was known as a hard ass. I couldn't stand him. He never bent about anything. I don't know what you call it at Lane Murray, but it was our control desk or command. And so if that officer was the one that kind of dictated where all the officers went, he was not a sergeant or anything, but he was kind of that person that led chow and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And this officer just was, you can't get an extra roll of toilet paper. Like he was just a dick for years. And then lo and behold, guess what? He preyed upon one of the trustees and she got shipped off to Hobby and he got fired. And I don't know if they followed up with charges, but it was dealt with immediately. But at Lane Murray, at Crane, that stuff goes on and on and on and on
All
without
day.
being checked. Yeah.
All day. So what happens? Look, if an officer, say the inmate feels like she does want this attention and she is all for it, even though we all know she's not in a place where she's really equipped to make that decision, which is why the law's in place, right? But even if so, and then he's all for it, and it's just like what happened to your friend. He might get shipped off and he might get on probation, but she's going to medium custody. She's changing units, getting away from everybody that she might know and be comfortable with. She's going to lose contact visits with her kids for at least 6 months. I mean, I watched it happen. So my friend, while I was in medium custody, she was there because she had gotten shipped off another unit for having a relationship, and he was her boyfriend. She thought that they were still together, and he was still working, and they had it set up all, it doesn't take much to get a phone set up in somebody else's name and not use your real name on the phone when you call. And I mean, they were talking on the phone and everything. And do you know that it was about 3 months in to her being in medium custody with me, and she gets off the phone. She had called his phone that he had set up for her, and his wife answered and said,
OMG.
he's not going to be talking to you anymore. And she also worked for the TDCJ. She was
Oh my
also an
God.
officer. But I mean, you see what I mean? This was an affair. The man was having an affair, but the
Mhm.
girl honestly believed she was in love. They were like, in her mind, he's going to help her when she gets out. She has nothing. She has nobody. She's a recovering addict. She's burned all her bridges. And this is a lifeline for her. And then just like that, she realized she had been completely used.
Well, Marcy, and that brings up another point. His wife worked for the system, and we had a lieutenant that was having a sexual relationship with someone and got girl. They set them up, recorded it, like got them in their spot, and there was a camera and a secret camera. I mean, they busted them cold, smooth, because her friend had went and reported and agreed to work with them to they go in this spot the whole 9 yards, right? Okay, his wife was a sergeant at that unit. They're not,
Can
I
you
don't know how they were together on that unit, but the lieutenant and the sergeant were married. Well, he gets shipped off. They
can
threatened
you
to fire
imagine
him.
that? Can you imagine that conversation at home? Can you imagine
Well, here's the
what you're
deal. The girl that got caught was in SEG for a long time before they shipped her to Hobby. And guess who was still there? His wife. So
Yep.
it's like you have all of these dynamics that are just ripe for an abuse of power for somebody to get hurt. And that
And
lady went from being the nicest sergeant to an absolute nightmare with all of us.
I can imagine, because now she has an image of what it's completely changed her image of incarcerated women. So this Ken Merkel says good old boys stick together, and that's kind of how we talked about prisons being built in such rural communities that family members, spouses, and so TDCJ policy says spouses can work together even if they're ranking spouses, as long as they're not on the same shift. So a lieutenant and a sergeant can both work at the same unit. Like maybe that lieutenant's a host squad lieutenant, he's not directly over her, or maybe he's on a night shift or on the other shift and he's not directly, however it goes. But that happens. So that's another reason you, as an inmate, you have to be so careful in everything that you do or say. So when an officer would approach me in some kind of inappropriate way, you would have to do the you're so funny and carry on about your business, because you could not just say no, like I'm in prison, do I look like I want a boyfriend right now? You can't say
Mhm.
that. That's not an option, because if you
Mhm.
make him mad, it's not just him that you
Right.
have to deal with. It's his cousin and his uncle and his brother and his wife and his daughter and his girlfriend and everything else. So yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up a good point about rejection. And, that was really speaks to everything when you interact with them, right? Is that I have to find a way to say no, to get out of this situation without making them angry, without them feeling threatened. And that went with anything. A lot of times I used to say, some of the staff members that the correctional officers that we had to work with daily, they did a lot of, we talked about this in bullying, is a lot of making fun and wanting you to participate in it. Laugh, haha, I'm making fun of you, laugh. And you're supposed to just laugh and say, oh yeah, I'm silly. Oh, I don't know what I'm thinking. I'm just dumb, because anything that you said that made them feel like, you know, they they had to feel good about them. You had to make them feel good all the time. Don't make them feel like shit because they treat you bad. Don't make them feel rejected. Don't make them feel anything other than happy and superior. And anything you do other than that is an absolute threat. Rejection to one of those male officers is pouring fuel on a fire. So you're right. It's the whole, oh, thank you. Oh, that's sweet. That's so silly. That's funny. Okay, all right. And then you just have to be vigilant and watch where they're at all the time, so you're not there.
And that just adds to the level of stress and anxiety that you already have being in prison. It just takes it to a whole nother level. And I can definitely see how, if it was, I can see that how easy it would be to just go with whatever they were saying. Like, especially if you just had a little less. I feel like I was raised a little differently than a lot of women that ended up in prison, just because I was like a middle class family, but I was, my parents are still married, all of that. Like my decision to get in prison was my decision and not because of circumstances around me. And because of that, I feel like I had a little bit different look on things sometimes as far as self confidence goes. And
Mhm.
so I think I was able to, but I could see even for me that sometimes that was difficult. And so I could see how easy, if it had just been a little bit different, if I had been just a little bit less knowledgeable of how that circumstance actually is and what goes on, how easy kind of it would be for me to feed into that. Because oftentimes an officer's not just like, "Hey, want to meet me in the closet?"
Mhm.
It doesn't
Mhm.
start like that,
Right.
right? It starts with, man, I mean, I had an officer tell me one time, "Would it offend you if I told you how beautiful you were?" And I said, "Yeah, well, it would offend my husband." And I mean, that's just what, I just tried, and I kinda laughed and it made it, and then that was enough for him. But if I mean, how easy would it have been to turn the events and for me to have just said, "Oh, thank you," and then it would just escalate a little more,
Right.
and then
Right.
you don't even realize what you're getting into, and it's like things like that in life too, right? I mean, I think affairs happen that way also it's like baby steps going in and going in. Belsky 937 says it sounds like a Lifetime movie, and actually, that sounds like a pretty interesting movie.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of Lifetime, the old school Lifetime movies we used to watch way back in the day. When you got to prison, did they still have cable?
Yes, we had Lifetime and we lived for it. We had Lifetime. We had VH1 movies still.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was before there was 31 Christian channels
Yeah,
and
they are right. That's it. That's
and
it.
TNT. And then we had
TNT.
TNT.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
we could either watch Law and Order or gospel music. It wasn't. But yes, when I first got to prison, we still had those channels. We had them until about 2013, even the
Yeah.
first several years I was there.
It
So
was those old school. I just watched an old Lifetime movie last night, just from the 80s. I was like, man, this is comfort food. Like when we were in the day room on the weekend, let's just watch a Lifetime marathon. Yeah, so it does sound like that, right? But I mean, what they don't show is the full, negative outcome to whatever's happening. It's just the little footnotes, and when the film goes off, what happened to so and so, and no, I'll tell you what happened to so and so. They lost everything. They were assaulted, and yeah, it does sound
there
like
were no happy endings. There
none.
were no happy endings to that. I have some videos.
Let's
So
see it.
yeah, so I'm the first one. I'm not even going to show it. I think I'll just tell you. Someone commented. We were talking about. I did a video about officer inmate relationships, and someone commented. And so I'll read the comment. It says, and a prison in Arkansas let my cellmate go to her mother's funeral. So the girl got a furlough, and to get a furlough, a correctional officer has to actually escort you to the funeral. The girl ended up getting pregnant by the cop. And the cop in this situation is not a police officer, it's a correctional officer. So the officer escorts the girl to her mother's funeral, and the girl comes back impregnated by the officer. And so I just put this video, and it's literally the comment over my head playing some trending music. And people went crazy over that video because I got a lot of feedback saying that's not rape. That's not what's wrong with that. Maybe she wanted some. Maybe she was looking for comfort because of her mother. And to me, that makes it even
Yeah,
worse.
that
Like,
makes it worse. So that lets me know that he preyed on her vulnerability. It was at a funeral.
right, right. So I'm going to play this video of just me responding to someone said, "Hey, so what's the deal? What if it was consensual?" And so here's my video about that. Let's see if I can do it really easily. I
You
did
got it.
try. So
I believe
let
in
me
you.
do this. Oh, look, it's working.
Look, we're doing it. We're doing the thing.
Oh, look, it's seriously not.
It was so close. It was so
How
close.
it did it while we were practicing. Hey,
Oh,
y'all. Okay,
I didn't did a lot.
y'all just ignore those. Hey, y'all, what is consensual sex in prison? There is none. Policy says there's none, not even in between inmate. Now, this question is on a video that we're talking about a girl that got pregnant in prison. How did she get pregnant? Obviously, from a staff member. Does that happen? It happens all the time, and it's RAPE, period, point blank. When someone who has complete power over your life, literally over your freedom, has a relationship with you like that, it is completely immoral and unethical. It's wrong in all kinds of ways. One lie from an officer can literally keep someone in prison. All they have to do is write it on paper and turn it in, and their word is golden. It's illegal, and he should be arrested for getting that girl pregnant. Hey, y'all. Okay. Now let me get back. Am I back?
Yeah, you are. There you are. I like on the video you put on there, I said what I said. Well, because it's true. All it takes is one lie or one true statement, one like any statement. And if that's it, that's a wrap. That's all it takes from a correctional officer. They have that much authority and power over your life. So, rejecting somebody, there was a case of a very good friend of mine, and she doesn't mind me sharing this story. It's completely public record. Now, he wasn't a correctional officer, he was her lawyer, he was her court appointed attorney.
Mm.
And he got her into a situation where, he preyed upon her vulnerability. She was facing a pretty hefty charge. He said, "I'm going to get you probation because I know the judge is my godfather." She was like, "Oh, okay. Like, I just started school. I just got my life back on track, and I don't want to end up in prison for this. And, probation, that would be great." And he says, "Well, what are you going to give me?" She was like, "Oh." So he enticed her into that relationship. And I remember she told me, she said, "Jennifer, I didn't want to do it." But it's like you said earlier, this feeling of, I don't really want to do it, but it's happening and I don't really know how to stop it. And then once it starts happening, I can't stop it. I just keep doing it. And I don't know what to do. And, he was her bondsman as well. So she started to say, I don't want to do this, because he would just call her and say, "Be here." She's like, "I don't want to do this. I don't like this. How this is making me feel." He said, "If you don't come here, I'm going to revoke your bond." And she goes, "I'm going home." And she said, I didn't believe he would do it because, this was serious stuff that I'm sure he didn't want me to report. And he revoked her bond. And she went to jail, ended up with a sentence, and she won her appeal finally. That she had opened the door, and said in the appeal it was an abuse of power. Yes, it was inadequate, ineffective counsel, because he had me in a sexual relationship unwillingly. And he was, they asked for his comments when this first came out, and he said, "Well, she's bitter, she's upset, she didn't get what she wanted." He was running for judge. And then lo and behold, as soon as she said it, everybody called her a whore and a liar. And all of these women suddenly poured in. And this is what I always say about, when people say, "Well, where were all these women when all this happened?" Now one person says something, now they're all jumping on the bandwagon. And she said that the ladies that she saw afterwards said, "I saw your story on the news and I heard what he said about you. And I said, fuck that. He did it to me." And so they collected all the evidence, including minors. This fool had recorded all of this at a hotel, a motel, in other locations as well. And he kept it in a secret place in his office. He got 80 years for this, because he was preying on a certain type of woman on certain type of charges. And a county clerk was feeding him these cases. And so, I know that, again, he's an authority figure, right, in the criminal legal system. But that's what I mean, and that's what you're really getting at is, the sense of, once you're in it, you can't get out. And you may not have really fully understood what you were doing, or maybe you felt manipulated or vulnerable, or I just remember her saying, I felt so disgusted with myself, and I couldn't get out and I couldn't stop. And when I finally did, he revoked my bond because he has that authority, and
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be punished. And that's what goes on the inside with staff members.
He had confidence enough that her word wouldn't mean anything.
Hmm.
He
Oh,
was
he
confident.
said it.
And that,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's exactly the same scenario with correctional officers that do crazy things. They're confident enough to do it because they have watched their coworkers get away with it. They have played it out. Look how many women he had done that to, that were afraid to come forward. And I'm not downing on anybody for not coming forward, because that's a personal thing. I can't imagine how tough it was for her too, but I'm just saying he was confident because there was nobody bold enough to say, "I don't care what people say or think. This is my story." That's why it's
Mhm.
important for us to tell our stories, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, and I remember when we were sitting in the day room, Marcy, and she was waiting on her appeal to come back. And she was like, I should just tap out. Like there was this point where she's like, I don't want to do any of this. I don't care. I'll just take the sentence I have. And, they're going to want me to testify if they start finding stuff out. And I said, honey, I'm going to respect whatever you want, but just know that what's happening to you happened to so many other people, and ended up being minors too, that don't have a voice. And I had a friend that came back because we're not just talking about correctional officers. This happened from medical too. There was PA that assaulted somebody, and she was like, Jennifer, that fear. And I said, and then she looked at me and she goes, wait a minute, because she had decided, well, I don't want to say anything. I said, okay. She goes, but you know what? You've heard this from other people? I said, yeah, I have. That's why I don't go to that PA. She goes, so you mean if one of them would have told, then maybe this didn't happen? This wouldn't happen to me? I said, yes, ma'am. She goes, I'm going up there right now. And I said, well, you tell the PREA sergeant to call me out. Because she was a bad actor. And that was one of the reasons she didn't want to say anything, because just what you said, nobody's going to believe me. There is this myth that women have to behave. We have a perfect victim, that what she looks like and what she sounds like, well, it can't be any of us in prison, or a woman with a, difficult background. And they bank on that. Abusers bank on that.
Absolutely. When you said medical staff, it just made me think about the psych doctor that got walked off the unit for having a relationship. And I think, if I'm remembering correctly, it was correspondence that was found, but I don't remember that story fully, but I just remember that we lost the psych guy, the one, the only one on the unit with 1,300 women. We lost him because of an inappropriate relationship, something with one of his clients, with one of the ladies. It was, so, that just adds a whole nother level. Like, not only are you in prison and completely away from your entire life and everyone that would rally to support you in anything that you do, but now you're here for medical help, psychiatric care. Yeah, it's unbelievable. So there is a little news clip. Shall we play it?
Sure.
Shall we play it? Well, I'll let y'all see. Assuming I can figure out how to do it again the right way.
She's got it. You got it. I feel it. The excitement's building. Here we go.
An inmate who got pregnant in jail says she was repeatedly raped by a corrections officer.
The stunning allegations are in a newly filed federal lawsuit. Investigative reporter Ben Hall spoke exclusively with the woman's parents, who are now raising the baby.
It's okay.
I tell him every day his mom loves him and she'll be home soon.
Sharon Fowler is caring for a newborn grandchild she never expected.
And now we have number 6 grandchild, which I love dearly. And why this would happen, I have no answers.
The Fowlers remember when their daughter Jessica called them from jail, where she'd been for months, with the shocking news.
She said, Daddy, I'm pregnant. And then I'm like, how do you get pregnant in jail? And it's not possible.
Jessica, who was sent to the Moore County Jail last year on a probation violation, has filed a federal lawsuit claiming she was repeatedly raped by corrections officer Shane Hopkins. According to the suit, he was newly hired and had not yet completed his training.
This had to be a power trip, a power. It had to be power. And that would be his power over her.
In the lawsuit,
man, yeah. So pregnancies, that happens. And I know personally too, and it was so interesting. I was visiting with another girl that has a YouTube channel from Lane Murray, and she said, I know too. And I thought, oh, well, hello, we know the same too. I know personally too, that inmates that got pregnant while they were incarcerated. And that just adds a whole nother level of sadness. It's just an entirely sad situation, because now you're possibly a first-time mother either way with a newborn baby that you're not going to be able to keep. It's just,
Yeah, Marcy, I think too about, my time in the Texas Youth Commission, which is now the Texas Juvenile Justice Department, TJJD. And if you think this stuff is bad in TDCJ, my goodness. And it's certainly not even defendable to say it was a relationship in the youth system. It 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 is even worse though in terms of preying upon and victimizing boys and girls in that system. And under the guise of I care about you and I love you, and that system just completely nowhere near even the little half-assed measures that TDCJ tries a lot of the time. That system, we had no. It was just day-to-day survival, trying to get away from this stuff, from the creepy guy that keeps coming to your cell. Hey, beautiful, please. Like finding ways to put on more clothes and stay out of corners. And, he's giving you love notes. And I had one guy that did that. I've never had a staff member ever. There was one female officer at Mountain View that kept coming to my cubicle, and I would just pretend to be asleep. Sometimes she'd wake me up, and I'm like, if y'all see this woman on shift, please, I'm going to leave. I'm going to go to work or go to rec or just try to pretend to be asleep because I'm not giving you any vibes. But, I felt safer dealing with that situation than with a man. And when I was younger, he just kept showing up and slipping me notes and, hi, young lady, I was thinking about you today. And I'm like, God, help, what do I do? Because I'd already seen so much that had happened there, and just daily figuring out ways to get away from this. And I see, so many younger women in that system just absolutely get preyed upon.
I can imagine going in as a child, and having to deal with very raw, very adult things. It just blows my mind. Yeah, and that kind of stuff's still going on, y'all. It's not something that happened. We're not talking about something that happened 50 years ago. This kind of stuff is happening. We hear from those kids. We hear from them. We hear from the ladies incarcerated. We hear from the men incarcerated about the conditions, about what's going on. And that's what we're trying to do, right? Give them a little bit of a voice. That's why we're discussing some of these things. And that's what drives us to do, Tunchi and I, to do a lot of things that we're doing, advocacy work. Man, I wish I could give you a big hug right now, Tunch, but it's against rules. We're not allowed to touch on the rec yard. That's
right. Like we're already pushing it, sitting in the grass. One time,
wait, grass? You had grass on your rec yard?
Oh boy, I'm fixing to get cussed out now. So I know that y'all had those I remember when I was at Lane Murray at 18, and I remember being so depressed, sitting on one of the tables at F dorm, when that outdoor little slab, right? And I was just, so I got transferred to Crane, which had more grass. But when I got to Mountain View, it's huge rec yard, huge, Marcy. It like a track. Okay. It's a dirt track around the rec yard. The weight bench is way in the corner. That's where people would go to work out and get it on. Okay. Because it was so far away, you could barely see it. And then we had the slab, which was the basketball court and the volleyball court. And then in between was just this huge field. So we would all go like, do you want to sit on the basketball court? Do you want to go sit in the grass? And so if you went to go sit in the grass, that was your girlfriend,
It was
right?
boom, chicka, wow, wow.
Yeah, right.
You could hold hands. You could
all
do
that.
whatever.
You could get to hold hands and do all this stuff. And the officer is in the gym on the phone. Like the rec yard there was just, the only person watching is the person in the picket. So one time I told Diane, because we'd go out there to walk, and I said, man, I'm really tired. Let's just go sit in the grass. She goes, no, people are going to think we're diddling. And I said, no, they're not. So we sat in the grass, and sure enough, like we were only sitting there for like 20 or 30 minutes. And the next day we're like, do you like that girl tune? And that's when me and Diane first met. She was like, no. She said, well, everybody saw y'all sitting in the grass.
She was right. They thought y'all were boom chicka wow wow.
Yeah.
And that's what happens because you were in the wrong side of the rec yard. Let me tell you about our rec yards, which I know, and you were even in F dorm, so you were in a nicer one. But Lane Murray has individual rec dorms for each dorm. So you literally potty, shower, eat, and rec with the exact same people that you sleep next to. There's no, and then our rec yard, this is how many laps it took for me to run 1 mile. 21. 21 laps. So if that can give you an idea about how small that piece of concrete, there certainly wasn't any grass. Y'all, I would get excited to go to work and get to be stepping out in the grass. So
Honey, I know. And look, it would take us 4 laps around our rec yard for a mile. That's how big it was. But yeah, there could be a whole episode on all the shenanigans that actually happen on the rec yard.
absolutely, absolutely.
But we can't
Okay.
be sitting in the grass together because, Brittany will beat the hell out of me, and she will.
Yeah, that's not happening, ma'am. If you had long hair and a ponytail, it might be different. But since we're in prison and we're going by prison rules, you have that.
Which
fade.
how many girls that were 2 femmes together got away for a long time?
all the time because they're just friends. Because then they're just
That's
friends.
my sister. That's my sister in Christ.
What I love, and we're getting so off subject, but that's okay, y'all. We only have a few minutes left. But what I love is, so there would be maybe I have a girlfriend and maybe she's in a different dorm. Like Brittany and I did our time. She was always in a different dorm. And Brittany is definitely more masked than me. So now I'm in my dorm, but maybe I pick a play brother. And so now, oh, Brittany, this is my brother. And we fall out to chow together, and Brittany's not going to trip because that's my family. But
Right.
in the dorm, we saw this scenario played out so much. What is this? What is this saying? The closest gets the mostest. Maybe
Closest
we
gets
need
the
to talk
most.
about that next.
We should.
Have we done prison relationships?
No, not like that.
No. Oh yeah, maybe we should. But yeah, the closest gets the mostest. That was the
That's
I
my play brother. Oh, okay. It's my
yeah.
sister in Christ.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or
Yeah,
or
you are.
if he has a ponytail, then all of a
It's
sudden it's no
suddenly
longer
safe.
a threat. That's a safe. That's, oh, she wears eyeshadow. Yeah, she's fine. Yeah. And so
Okay, well,
golly.
we probably need to wrap it up because it's 5:57. But we really enjoyed everybody being here. I know it was a heavy topic. I usually try to end with something lighthearted, and this did bring me joy to laugh at Sisters in Christ.
Yes.
Yeah, on my YouTube channel, I always end with, "What's your favorite Taylor Swift song?" But I won't do that to our audience. I swear.
No.
Not right now.
This is a Taylor
Wait, that
free
was real
zone.
quick. That you didn't have to say it no real quick like that.
Well, well, Tunchi, this isn't our only space that we share, and Taylor Swift shares all those other spaces with us. It's amazing how often you can figure out ways to bring her up. So, we're
In front of everybody, in front of judges, in front of legislators, I sure do.
yes,
Immediately.
go into legislation in your Taylor Swift hoodie.
Oh yeah. I'm bringing the Lord with me.
So let's do it. Let's talk about prison relationships. We might could figure out how to have it. We might could figure out how to have a guest. We might could do well, I'll talk to you later, but I have some things in mind. We could invite some people that are going to be in town.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Okay, y'all, come hang out with us. Same time, same place, right here on our channel, 7:00 Wednesday night, and we will talk about prison relationships or something to that nature. We'll work around that. That'll be our base right here on the Rec Yard.
Awesome. Bye, y'all.
Bye. Okay, we got to wave.